People of the sports world. Today, I am breaking down the week 1 of the NFL season. So, we're going to go game by game. That's what today's episode will be. I'm going to jump right into it. We start with a 24-20 win at home for the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions, who hosted the Dallas Cowboys. So I've kind of just written down a bunch of key points for each team, things I think that are important, things I wanted to talk about. We'll start with Dallas. Their defense really struggled without Micah Parsons. Now, that should seem like a very obvious statement, I know. But coming off the edge, there is very little life on that Cowboys defensive line. It's not good. They did not get to Jalen Hurts in the first half. The only reason they got to Jalen Hurts at all in the second half is because Matt Eberflus finally decided to start dialing up blitzes. And, the blitz actually worked a lot. It was pretty effective when they did run it. But then if it didn't get home, the Eagles were torching them. And that's why the Eagles were having success. The little success they had in the second half was because they were able to guide past blitzes. It should be important. It's pretty important to note that this game was put on rain delay towards the end of the third quarter. They were out for about an hour. It completely changed the flow of this game. It was very high scoring to start, and then there was no scores in the fourth, and I think a field goal was the only score at all from either team for the Eagles when Elliott drilled one in the third. I think that was the only scoring in the second half. But overall, the Cowboys defense, it's going to make or break this team. If they can step it up and start to play well, like they did in the second half. I thought they stopped the run really well in the second half. We'll get into the issues with the passing game from the Eagles when we get to them. So the Cowboys defended the pass pretty well as well, but overall, especially in the first half, the defense got cooked. And that was quite an issue. Again, they defended the pass pretty well. A.J. Brown did not have any success. A.J. Brown had one catch. Devonta Smith only had two. Goddard had a good game, but that's a linebacker issue more than a secondary issue. So overall, I thought the Cowboys' passing defense was good, but goodness me, can they not stop the run? And then they did in the second half. So if they can figure out how to put that into a complete game, that defense can step it up, and this Cowboys team is going to be good. That's the biggest takeaway for me from the Dallas Cowboys from Thursday night, is that they are very much going to be in and around the playoff conversation. And if they can just make a few adjustments, it could be an interesting season for them. On the offensive side of the ball, Dak and CeeDee Lamb, that connection is going to carry this offense. Now, CeeDee Lamb did drop 4 passes, which is very uncharacteristic. And I wouldn't expect that to be something that continues throughout the season, especially when 3 of them came in that fourth quarter, coming off an hour-long break. The ball might have been – I'm not trying to make excuses for him. We know he's elite. We know he's probably not going to have a drop issue. So I'm not too worried about that. But he did drop 4 passes, and that was very uncharacteristic. However, before that, he had 7 receptions for 110 yards. I mean, Dak Prescott found him as often as he could. He was the only guy getting looks in the fourth quarter, and I think it actually hurt the Cowboys more than it helped them, considering the fact that CeeDee kept dropping the ball. But this is the way that their offense is gonna. This is the way that their offense is going to flow. It's gonna be a lot of Dak and CeeDee Lamb. Now, I'm sure George Pickens will be involved eventually. He only had 3 receptions for 30 yards Thursday night, but it takes time to get an understanding between the receiver and the quarterback. And he made a couple of nice grabs. Not anything super impressive, but I think George Pickens just allows – you got to keep your eye on George Pickens, which means you can't just sit and totally try to scheme out CeeDee Lamb of the game. So just his name being there at all does help this offense. So that is a good thing for them. Moving into the Eagles, who have a bit more to talk about because, like I said, the passing game of the Eagles was really bad. It was almost non-existent in the first half. Now, the good thing about that, and I talked about this on my TikTok. If you don't, there's links in the description and in my channel. You can go check that out. But I did state that I thought the Eagles' offense was just fine because they didn't need to pass the ball because Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts ran all over the Cowboys. And I mean all over the Cowboys. It was ridiculous. Saquon only had 64 yards and a touchdown. Hurts had 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I mean, every time one of them had the ball, they were picking up 5, 6 yards, just absolutely coasting, and there was no answer until late in the fourth quarter, really, from the Cowboys. And yeah, I mean, it was quite the issue for the Cowboys and how well the Eagles ran the ball, and that doesn't surprise anyone. It's how that offense is dominating, but you can't have A.J. Brown getting his first catch in the fourth quarter, his first target in the fourth quarter. I have no idea how that happened. I didn't think the coverage on him was like perfect. He just wasn't given. He wasn't part of the game plan. It's what it felt like, and so I don't know what Sirianni's decision on that was, but they did not feed A.J. Brown at all, and that's a big issue. As for the defense of the Philadelphia Eagles, Zach Bond is such an animal. I mean, he is so good. He had 6 solo tackles, 3 assists, and a tackle for loss. He's just everywhere on that field for the Eagles. That chase down tackle he had, I think it was against Miles Sanders, was so good. The pursuit of it, just textbook. I mean, the guy is the life of this defense, the heart and soul of it, and he makes all the difference. Now, missing Jalen Carter did hurt a lot. Good thing he is not going to be suspended for them, because I would seriously doubt their chances against the Chiefs, although the Chiefs didn't look great against the Chargers. They obviously lost that game. We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, the defensive line of the Eagles struggled to get pressure. I think a lot of that was because Jalen Carter was missing. Had they had Jalen Carter, I don't think they would have struggled. We'll see how they look against Kansas City on that front. But then the only other concern with this Eagles team is that secondary. Not only did Quinion Mitchell have a really tough time, which we're going to excuse him, he's against CeeDee Lamb. That's pretty much solidified top 3 receiver in the entire NFL. I think very few people would argue with that. But it was a tough game for Quinion Mitchell, and not only that, it feels like they're missing a piece to this secondary without Darius Slay. I don't criticize them for not bringing in or not keeping around Darius Slay, but they do need to figure out how to fix that hole, and I would be surprised if Vic Fangio didn't fix it. So I'm sure we'll see a couple of different looks, but once he's found his method of fixing that hole, I don't know quite who they have just straight on replacing Darius Slay, but you might see a couple of different guys, a couple of different ways of scheming things, and this Eagles defense could look just a little bit different come the end of the season, come even halfway through the season, in just in terms of how they approach shutting down passing offenses. Is the Friday night game in Brazil. It will go down as a Chargers home win, which is pretty cool for them. So that's a big win over the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll start by saying that it finishes 27-21 in favor of the Los Angeles Chargers, who I thought looked really, really strong. But we're going to go ahead and start with the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes looked like MVP Patrick Mahomes that we saw a few years ago and haven't seen the last 2 seasons, I'd say. But, I mean, some of the throws that he made, no other quarterback in the league makes that throw. The one to Hollywood Brown where he's being hit by Khalil Mack and still puts it in the breadbasket. Now, granted, Hollywood had to turn around, but there was so much time that it didn't matter. That throw was insane. He had the weird, right by the line of scrimmage kind of weird toss that he completed for 3 yards plus more after the catch. The guy's just so good, and I'm kind of sick of not hearing people say, oh, Mahomes is definitely the best quarterback in the league, because he is. He's never not been to an AFC championship game. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, and he proved that. Even though they lost, he deserved to win that game. He made all of the right plays, and didn't really make any massive mistakes. He went 24 for 39, 258 yards, and 2 total touchdowns, one in the air, one on the ground. So it's scary to see him playing like that again. And if that Patrick Mahomes continues to stick around, that might be enough to see the Chiefs back in the Super Bowl again. But I won't get too far ahead of myself. I'll stay where we are at the moment. Now, this offense is going to be in some trouble. Because Xavier Worthy obviously got rocked by his own man, Travis Kelce. It was a really weird play. It was like the third play of the drive, the first drive, and I think Kelsey ran in the wrong route, or maybe he ran it too tight. I don't remember, but yeah, he just knocks over Worthy. Worthy leaves, and I don't think he's going to play against Philly this weekend. So very not a good look for the Chiefs. Now they're down Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice for at least 6 weeks, obviously due to suspension. So the note I have here is that Kelsey, Juju, or Hollywood is going to have to step up. Hollywood is going to need to continue to step up because he was good. He was very good against the Chargers. He didn't score a touchdown, but he had 99 yards on 10 catches. That kind of volume is something that the Chiefs need from one of their receivers. Now, Kelsey scored a touchdown. Other than that, he didn't do a whole lot. And Juju had a few catches here and there. But one of these guys is going to have to make that obvious number one target jump. Whether it means Kelsey goes back to being the elite level tight end on the receiving and yards after catch, or if it means that Hollywood's going to continue to stretch the field, one of them is going to have to produce elite production as a number one target. So I wouldn't put it past Patrick Mahomes to be able to win games with this team, with this receiving core. I wouldn't be surprised if they beat the Eagles this week. But yeah, I mean, it's a worrying sign, and I think the Chiefs look very human. And it's a huge win for the Chargers, don't get me wrong. But if I'm a Kansas City fan, I'm just not worried yet. I'm really not. They didn't look very good at the start of last year, and they started 8-0. So, you know, here's the thing. With the Chiefs, it's not necessarily about being the one seed. It's about making it comfortably to December and battling in the playoffs. That's what they do. You know, December and January, you have to be there, and they will be there. So that takes me to the Chargers, who I thought looked very good. The biggest thing for me is that is the best of receiving cores played for Justin Herbert in his entire career. Quentin Johnston had a great game, a really, really good game, scored twice, just looked a lot better, a lot crisper in his route running, and Keenan Allen kind of dialed back the clock. He was good, and he saw like 10 targets. So, I mean, I think Harbaugh is going to trust Herbert to go out there and lead this team with his arm until Amarian Hampton is really settled in and is really ripping apart the defensive lines that they face. Now, I understand this week is not a week to be pounding the rock because the Chiefs stopped the run very, very well. But they didn't need to run the ball because Justin Herbert found open receivers, and the receivers were holding the ball. And that was the X factor, really, in the fact that Herbert was able to compete with Patrick Mahomes in this game. Then, on defense, their front seven, so the D-line and the three linebackers, had a great game. I thought they were really, really strong. It's not easy to get after Patrick Mahomes, and they were doing it very consistently. I think they got 2 sacks on the day. Yeah, they didn't do it once but twice. They had 8 quarterback hits. They got after Mahomes, and that made things difficult. And it's a good Chiefs O-line. Very, very good. Mahomes is also really, interestingly enough, very good at escaping sacks. And it's not something, he's not super mobile, but he's just very hard to bring down. And it was an interesting thing. But yeah, the Chargers defensive line got after him, and they made quite the difference, and they absolutely squashed any chance of a run game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Pacheco couldn't get anything going, nor could Kareem Hunt. So that aspect forced Mahomes to make some of these Superman throws, which of course he did. But it was enough for them to win the game. So overall, a really, really good performance from the Chargers. And there's very little to criticize their defense for. I thought that they made all of the right plays. They got a couple of big stops early, and that carried them through. Their offense was able to do enough to find a way to win the game. To the first of the 12 o'clock games on Sunday, we saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just about scrape a win in Atlanta over the Falcons. It finishes 23-20. The Falcons missed a game-tying field goal right at the end. Younghoe Koo put it wide right. And this game was interesting. This game was a lot of fun, to be honest with you. We'll start with Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield was pretty inconsistent throughout the entirety of it up until the last drive, and that's when it mattered because Baker Mayfield was so good on that final drive. 45 yards downfield. They started, I think it was a touchback, so they started at the 75, but he gets absolutely drilled and draws a flag well after he threw. He wasn't even giving the ball to anyone. He was throwing the ball away, and he gets just whacked for no reason. It was a really boneheaded play by the Falcons defensive lineman. I don't quite remember who it was. But yeah, he ends up with 45 passing yards, 4 for 5, and a touchdown. And yeah, the offense looked good, but Mayfield did struggle with a bit of inconsistency. It's early. I wouldn't be too worried about it if I was a Bucs fan. And I think this is the year that Baker Mayfield's pretty much going to solidify himself as a top 10, maybe even a top 8 or 7 quarterback in the NFL. And if he can improve on that inconsistency, like last year, he was pretty consistent throughout the majority of the season. That'll be the difference maker, man. And this offense is so good. And it will be so much better once Chris Godwin gets healthy. If Chris Godwin can get and stay healthy, this offense is going to drive a lot of defensive coordinators crazy. There's just so many weapons, whether it's Bucky Irving on the ground or Mike Evans on a vertical, Chris Godwin underneath, and then Emeka Egbuka did the same thing that Mike Evans is really good at. He was finding seams, he was getting himself one-on-one, and he was making catches. He had 2 touchdown catches, the game-winning touchdown catch. So this offense is going to cause a lot of issues for even elite defenses, even the most elite defenses. And Tampa is not one to play with, man. And then this win here specifically is really big because I think the only team that scares them in the South, the only team that scares them in the South at all, is the Atlanta Falcons, and you've already started with an early win over them. So that's a big result for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As for their defense, it just absolutely annihilated the run. On the ground, there was nothing for the Falcons to do. Bijan did not have a great game running the ball. He had a great game in the passing game. He was really effective when they were throwing him the ball, but running it, Vita Vea and Levante David, as well as Savoca Dennis, just absolutely shut down the run. It wasn't even close. There was nothing for the Atlanta Falcons to do. Algier couldn't get anything going. Bijan couldn't get anything going until he was being thrown the ball. That defensive line of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is really solid, really, really good. That takes me to Atlanta. I thought Michael Penix he looks legit, man. Continued to show it at the end of last year, and it's promising start for this season. He was 27 for 42, which was a little bit low on the accuracy side, but I mean it's still pretty comfortably over 50%. 298 yards. He had 6 carries for 21 yards and a touchdown as well. I think him showing flashes of being a dual threat is promising as well. It's another aspect that the Falcons can use, and he's not going to go out of his way to scramble, but he can when he needs to. And the guy's arm is so good. It's so very, very strong arm. His deep ball accuracy is so impressive. It really is. Puts the ball on a rope every time he throws it. There's a lot of arm talent. There's a lot to like about Michael Penix, and I think the Falcons do have their quarterback of the future. I don't think there's any concerns about Michael Penix for me at all. However, the only success that they're going to have is if they're going to Drake London or Bijan Robinson. I think this offense is going to flow through those two. London had 15 targets, only came up with the ball 7 times. Some of them were on Michael Penix, but, good defending. And then I think London had a drop, but they need him to be healthy. And so if he is not healthy, he left the final drive with an injury. I think it was a knee. I'm not sure if it was too serious, but they need him to be healthy for this offense to succeed, unless Darnell Mooney can get healthy, because Darnell Mooney was very good at the end of last season. That would be a big score for the Falcons as well to have him back, because he is a very solid receiver number 2. But then, yeah, it's if Drake London's hurt, it's going to be Bijan. On offense, they're going to score off explosive plays, and they're going to come from those two that I've already mentioned. Hopefully London is healthy and that he'll be fine. And I think this Atlanta team can win a couple of games. I think I would still favor the Bucs out of the South, and I don't think more than one team out of that division gets into the playoffs. But do not be surprised if it is the Atlanta Falcons that come up and steal it out of that division. 12 o'clock game was the Bengals visiting the Cleveland Browns. A 17-16 win for the Bengals. Now, it was another ugly game from the offense, another ugly season starter for the offense, and This cannot continue to happen. This offense has got to pick it up as soon as possible. This is the reason they missed the playoffs last year. They started slow, didn't win games. They lost a couple of early games. You think back to the loss to the Patriots, and there was another silly loss in there that they can't afford losses because their offense isn't producing. The difference this time around was that the defense made two huge plays. They came in with two really clutch picks, and they had a bit of luck that goes their way, which has not happened in the past. Not only did Cleveland miss an extra point, but they also missed what would have been the game-winning field goal. So that was clutch. That was a big thing to swing the Bengals' favor. And I'd say that is the only way they got out of here with a win, because their offense was not good enough. The defense, again, two big interceptions. DJ Turner had one, and the other was Jordan Battle. Jordan Battle had a great game. Came in with 5 solo tackles and 7 assists. Overall, a really strong performance out of him. I thought Trey Hendrickson still looked good. Shamar Stewart was a little quiet, but he's barely been in camp, so I'll give him some slack. And yeah, the defense was good enough to win that game. The offense was simply not. And Burrow went 14 for 23, 113 yards and a touchdown, and he only found Jamar Chase twice for 26 yards. And Jamar Chase, I think, only had one drop. It might have been listed as 2. There just was not a really strong connection. Now, don't be fooled. The Cleveland Brown defense is very good. I'll talk about that when I get to Cleveland. But the offense, outside of Chase Brown, did not have a good game. That offensive line is still getting bullied, but again, you're facing Myles Garrett. Some of that is going to happen. But, just something seemed off. And, the connection between Burrow and Chase and Burrow and Higgins, the timing was off. There was Chase wasn't really getting open, to be totally honest with you, and that was quite the issue, especially late in the game. So, I'm a little frustrated with the way their offense played. I'm not even a Bengals fan, but it was just so annoying to see an offense that has been, especially the last 8 games of the season before, they were so hot. They could do no wrong. And now to go out there and just do so little right, it was frustrating. But Chase Brown was good. Chase Brown looks very strong running the ball. Not necessarily a power back, but he was bouncing tackles. He was fighting through contact. He looked pretty good, so that was the only positive of this Bengal offense. And then we go to the Browns. We will start with the positives for them in the fact that they only lost to the Cincinnati Bengals by 1 point because of not only a missed extra point, but a missed field goal. So they probably should have won that game. And I don't know how many times this is going to happen this year, but this is a positive result for them. It really, really is. And there was a decent amount to like from this team. Now, you'll start with Sampson, who had 12 carries for 29 yards, but he also had 8 receptions for 60 yards. He seems to kind of be Joe Flacco's safety net underneath. A lot of quarterbacks use tight ends that way. But Flacco was very happy to check the ball down to Sampson. 8 targets, 8 catches. He had a pretty surprising game. I did not see that coming. Now, I don't know if I can see that continuing to happen with Quinshon Judkins coming back. His carries probably will not stay that high. His receptions still could, and he could still probably be a utility back. I just don't know if he's going to see a lot of touches with Quinshon Judkins back. Once he does get going, I shouldn't say back, but once Judkins is tossed into the offense, I don't know how quickly that'll happen. I'm not even sure he'll play this week, but yeah, Sampson was a positive. Definitely the case. And then, the other positive being how strong that defense was, because this defense is still one of the better units in the NFL. Very complete defense. Myles Garrett, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and 5 solo tackles. He was very, very good, caused Joe Burrow a lot of issues, helped out stopping the run. And then Denzel Ward was only allowing 2 catches for 17 yards. He wasn't thrown at a whole lot. Greg Newsome was only 1 catch allowed for 10 yards. So that just overall, I thought the secondary was really good. Grant Delpit had a decent game as well. Those 2 wide corners, those 2 corners that were manned up with Chase and Higgins often, didn't give up a whole lot. And that was a pretty impressive thing to see. And then some of it starts up front. Again, with Myles Garrett, he generates so much pressure by himself that it made it hard for the Bengals to get into a rhythm. Because every time that you start to do something well, every time the Bengals got something going, Myles Garrett was either forcing penalties, whether it was a face mask or he was getting guys to jump because they need that extra time to get set, or he was getting home. And maybe not to land a sack or a tackle for loss, but he's just affecting Joe Burrow. Maybe he's rushing him. He's, put him in a hurry or landing a quarterback hit. He is just such an issue. And the other thing to think about this is that they do need Mason Graham. Mason Graham is going to develop. How quickly that happens might be the difference between this team winning games and not winning games, which I don't expect them to do a lot of this season. They have the Baltimore Ravens. They're not going to win that game. But this D-line could end up being a top 5 unit in the league in their respective area if Mason Graham can get going pretty quickly, because that not only absolutely shuts down the run, if Mason Graham can get home on the off chance, just because Myles Garrett's going to see double teams, Mason Graham, if he can ruin some offensive linemen, especially interior linemen who aren't as big. I could see this defense making a lot of noise in games, man. It could be something that Cleveland's going to build their future on if they can just get this offense a look anywhere near comfortable. I mean, this offense looks quite uncomfortable. And Flacco is just he's still serviceable, but man, I wonder how long it is until we see Shedeur Sanders, because I don't think Dylan Gabriel is going to be given any real chance. And it's so crazy to me that Shedeur Sanders isn't playing, because why wouldn't you go with the youngest guy, right? Because then 2 years later, maybe he's developed a lot. And I don't know. It's a very strange situation to me, but overall, there's more positive to take from this game for Cleveland than there was negative in my opinion. Hosted the New York Giants. Now, the Giants were very bad. This game was the score of 21-16, and it was just such an ugly game, man. It was really poor from the Giants. It is the third season in a row where they've not scored a touchdown in their season opener. And here's the thing for me with this Giants offense. If you're not going to win a lot of games anyway, right? Because they're not. They really aren't. And Russell Wilson isn't going to win you these games, right? He was 17 for 37, 168 yards. Did not score a touchdown. My point being, why not just start Jackson Dart, right? Because you're not winning games. I think it's a lot easier for a quarterback at the rookie level to just go out there and play. That's how he's going to learn. And then Russell Wilson's in the locker room to help him learn. So is Jameis Winston. I think it hurts you in the future by waiting say you wait till next season to give Jackson Dart starts. Well, now you're going to lose games off of rookie mistakes. So for me, it doesn't really make any sense to not just let Jackson Dart go out there and learn by playing. Especially when you're not winning games. You're not. And, there's always the argument, it comes quite often with the Packers, when Jordan Love stepped behind Aaron Rodgers. Well, firstly, Aaron Rodgers was playing at an MVP level, and they were winning games. That's how Jordan Love was able to learn, right? Here, Jackson Dart's not going to learn a lot by this team going out there and losing and watching his quarterback make mistakes. At least let the rookie quarterback make the mistakes so he can see where he's going wrong and he can feel it, rather than just sitting and watching someone else make those same mistakes. That's my point on this Giants offense. Now, there was a positive, and that's the fact that Malik Neighbors is a total freak athlete. And I'm going to put out there that I think he might be the best one-on-one jump ball receiver in the league. Now, this was a title that I consistently gave to Julio Jones, and then after Julio, it was DeAndre Hopkins comfortably. And then for a while, I would have said it was T. Higgins, but now Malik Neighbors, in jump ball situations, I don't know if I've seen him not come down with the ball. It is freakish how often he does it. And again, for a rookie quarterback, if I know that there's a guy one-on-one, I see my guy one-on-one, and that he's going to win that ball 95% of the time, as long as you put the ball in the area for him, that's something you want that connection to be built quite often. And yeah, it's just another reason for Jackson Dart to be starting. But I thought Malik Neighbors looked really good once again. No surprises there. The run game is dreadful. It is really bad. And it's not really even the fault of the running backs, because I think Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scatterbo have a lot of talent. I think individually they have their pieces that make them really good. Obviously, Scatterbo, ridiculous in terms of breaking tackles and fighting for extra yards. And then Tyrone Tracy's got great vision. And he can bounce tackles as well. So I think there's a lot to like from both backs. But this offensive line creates very little separation for the running backs to go into. There's no hole. They get dominated at the line of scrimmage, and the blocking is just not very good at all. And it makes it really hard for an offense to get going when there's no chance of establishing a run game. That is where I think the Giants are going to get absolutely bulldozed all year. And the fact that not only is Russell Wilson going to get sacked a lot, but there's not going to be an existing run game because that offensive line needs to be revamped. That offensive line's needed to be revamped for the last 4 years, and it hasn't. It hasn't gotten done. The final point on the Giants is that the defense actually looked pretty solid. They made quite a few big plays. I thought Brian Burns was really good. Kevon Thibodeau did his thing. Dexter Lawrence is awesome. And even Bobby Oreke made a lot of good plays. So there was individually quite a few, standout performances from this Giants defense that held the Commanders to only 3 touchdowns. Brian Burns had 6 total tackles and 2 sacks. Had a really strong game. Abdul Carter wasn't awesome, but he showed flashes of where he will be good. And overall, I think that Giants defensive line is very strong. The secondary scares me quite a bit, but I thought the Giants defense looked okay. There's just no offense. At the end of the day, there's nothing to help them win games because there's no scoring. As for the Commanders, Jaden Daniels was fine, but he didn't ball out like we saw him do last year. He didn't make the superstar plays that we know he can make. From the run game himself, had a couple of scrambles, decent few pickups. I did like how he wasn't getting hit. He took a lot of hits last year, and not only as a quarterback, but as a quarterback on the skinnier side, it's not the greatest look. It's something that was talked about a lot from Lamar Jackson when he was first coming into the league, and Lamar Jackson's done a really good job of adding some muscle, getting a little bit bigger. But yeah, Jaden Daniels still made a lot of good plays, but he just wasn't exactly the quarterback we saw last year. And so I'm not going to predict anything. I'm just saying if there is a sophomore slump from Jaden Daniels, don't be surprised. Really don't. Because it happens to everyone. It happened to C.J. Stroud. Justin Herbert went through a sophomore slump. Doesn't mean that he's not going to be an elite-level quarterback. It just means that he might struggle this year until they can figure out new ways for this offense to run through him. Deebo Samuel, on the other hand, looked great. Very, very good. And it wasn't even a typical Deebo style. He just looked really good as a receiver. Of course, he scores. I think he was scoring a rushing touchdown. But just in the pass game, he was very, very good. He still obviously did his rushing thing, scored the touchdown. But yeah, he was getting open. And it's another weapon for Jaden Daniels to use. Krosky Merritt was very good on the run as well. He had that big break. I think it was a 50-yard run. And that was a good look. And, I don't know if Austin Eckler's going to get a lot of touches in this offense with the way Bill Krosky Merritt's been playing. However, what I will say is that Terry McLaurin did not get the ball anywhere near enough. You cannot be paying this receiver $36 million a year for 4 targets. That, in itself, is where this offense... Because think of how many times last season the Commanders won games off of big plays between Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. There's probably countless instances of games that you can find them winning games off of plays like that, and there was none of it against the Giants, and that's a team you would expect is going to give up a fair few big plays, and it just didn't happen. The defense, however, looked strong. Again, didn't give up a touchdown. They did the right thing. Bobby Wagner and Deron Payne, excuse me, I almost said Cameron Payne. Deron Payne and Bobby Wagner are the two standouts on that side of the ball for them. So overall, I thought it's a good game from the Commanders. Go ahead and get into what was almost the game of the week until Sunday Night Football between the Steelers and the New York Jets. Now, let me start by saying that I did not expect this game out of Aaron Rodgers. It was really, really impressive. The Steelers take it 34-32 and was pretty much a shootout. We'll go ahead and start with the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers was so awesome. He was really, really good. A lot of vintage Aaron Rodgers in that performance. He made 3 or 4 throws where he's not really on the run, but his feet are not set at all, and he just slings it. Half of them were sidearm. The first touchdown to Ben Skoranek was just a sidearm throw. The very last touchdown that was to Calvin Austin was ridiculous. Now, admittedly, Calvin Austin's wide open, but the actual throw itself, right before he gets drilled, just on the money, starting to move outside the pocket, throws it on a dime. It was so good. Aaron Rodgers was fantastic. 22 for 30. He was accurate as ever in 4 touchdown passes. Just such a strong game. Multiple times did he just roll out, throw it with his right arm, just flick the thing. Just so insane. But other than that, I'll give him a shout. DK Metcalf, after the catch, was fantastic. He had 2 really nice runs after getting the ball in his hands. That isn't really something we've seen from him in Seattle. A lot of his big plays in Seattle were, doing all the running before catching the ball. And he was really good after the catch. Tomlin was drawing up plays for him to do that, and it worked really well. The defense, however, kind of got carved apart. They were run right through on defense. Breece Hall had a great game for the Jets, and they had 6 tackles for loss, which was good, and they only got home to Fields 1 time. The thing is that Justin Fields is so incredibly hard to get a sack on because he is so elusive back there. And that's been something he's been great since Ohio State. He was really good at it in Chicago. It is probably his best attribute. But we'll get into Justin Fields later. The defense, they didn't really get home. I would have liked to see a bit more out of TJ Watt. And, Darius Slay, 2 targets, gave up 2 catches for 41 yards and a touchdown. That isn't his best game. Certainly not. I thought Jalen Ramsey was really, really good. 3 targets, 1 reception, and only gave up 6 yards. So Jalen Ramsey looked great in his Steelers debut, not to mention that he got the game-winning pass breakup on Garrett Wilson. Jalen Ramsey looked a bit more like himself than he was last season in Miami. But the Steelers' defense can play a lot better. The bright side is that their offense put up 34 points, and that was enough to win them the game. So that is the positive for this defense. The Jets, Justin Fields might just revive his career in New York, man. That's where I'll start, because a lot of the criticism of Justin Fields the last few years is poor timing and poor accuracy. Justin Fields was 16 for 22. He missed 6 throws. It's very strong accuracy, and a lot of his throws were timing routes. It had to be thrown perfectly at the right time for the play to work, and he made a lot of them. And some of them were not easy throws. And he looked great. I thought he was really, really good. Of course, he still offers that ridiculous athleticism in the run game. But, overall, I thought Justin Fields was very, very, very good. Garrett Wilson had 7 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown. That connection from Ohio State did not miss a beat. There's a lot of positive in that Jets offense. Again, Breece Hall just had a ridiculous game. He might be back. That's how I'll put it. 19 carries for 107 yards, 2 receptions as well. And that's 2 receptions for 38 yards. So he's doing a lot of work. He got a lot of touches, and he made the most of them. So Aaron Glenn has this team, especially on offense, which is kind of an interesting, being the fact that he was a defensive coordinator. They have him looking really, really good on offense. It's the defense that that's going to need some adjusting. Now, don't get me wrong, the defense probably did do enough to win the game, and then they fumbled on special teams, which they went and cut that guy. I can't remember the name off his top of my head, but I think that's harsh because he had made a lot of decent plays for the Jets in the last 2 seasons. Then he fumbles. Admittedly, it's a very, very costly fumble, and it's not the fact that it's not a normal fumble. The ball basically gets touched by one of the guys trying to make the tackle, and it goes flying out of his hands. So maybe I'm not going to sit here and act like I know more than NFL GMs and coaches. So, they're going to cut a player for that kind of mistake. I assume they're going to make the right decision. However, the defense did really struggle, and the biggest part for me where they struggled was, they had a few plays that were just total blunders. One specifically that stuck with me is the Steelers ran a mesh concept, and there's I think it's a DB for the right side, and then their middle linebacker are both covering the guy sitting down. The wheel route was left open, so the safety blitzes over there, and as he does that, DK Metcalf ends up wide open and picks up 15, 20 yards after the catch because there's no one in the even near vicinity to make a tackle on the easiest route to cover of the whole play. And it was very odd that, those kind of plays were being given up by a defense that 2 years ago was one of the better units in the NFL. Last season they struggled, and they've continued to do so week 1. But where I think they really struggled was how quickly Aaron Rodgers was getting the ball out. His quick release made it very hard to generate any pressure, and these routes were being run well by Ben Skowronek, by Calvin Austin, who had a great game, and by DK Metcalf, allowing Rodgers to fit the ball into tight windows, and they were picking up big yardage after the catch. So that is how an Aaron Rodgers offense is going to be run. We've seen that for a decade in Green Bay. So that is not something that's going to be easy for any team to stop. So maybe that's not necessarily a Jets issue, and it's just a compliment to how well the Steelers ran their offense. But it is something that is going to be addressed, I assume, by Aaron Glenn. The Jaylen Warren touchdown, there's 2 big defensive breakdowns on that drive that leads to a score. So overall, the Jets have a lot of cleaning up to do on defense, but I think they're going to be in a pretty positive situation. Now, they play the Bills next weekend, which isn't fun at all. So they can avoid that. They'll be all right. Into what I would assume is everyone's biggest surprise, maybe unless you are an Indianapolis Colts fan, as they absolutely ruined the Miami Dolphins at home. The Dolphins, where do you even start? There was just so many things wrong. Very similar to the Jets, a lot of defensive breakdowns, but so many terrible plays on the offense. Tua Tagovailoa looked awful, abysmal. That is the only way to put it. Both of his interceptions almost blew my mind, especially the second one. The first one, he does kind of get hit, or maybe he sees the pressure, so he forces it. I don't know. He throws an absolute missile 5 yards over the head of Tyreek Hill, and Cam Bynum just takes one of the easiest interceptions he's going to see all season. And then the second one, Tua's rolling to his right, and he sees, I think, again, it's Tyreek Hill coming across on a late drag maybe, and Zaire Franklin is standing there, just standing there. And instead of leading it into the space that Tyreek Hill's going to be in, as he's moving to his left, I think, Tyreek's left to his right, he throws it where Tyreek Hill is standing. Firstly, even if Franklin isn't stood right there, there's no way that pass is completed. Tyreek Hill is going to have overrun that ball by 4 or 5 seconds. That's obviously an exaggeration, but, you get the point. And when Franklin is standing there, he takes 2 steps back and picks it off because that ball is not going to hit Tyreek Hill in the chest because he's not going to be there when the ball gets there. It was such a terrible decision, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. The sloppiness of Tua Tagovailoa was really bad, and it cannot continue. Mike McDaniel's in trouble of losing his job. I will say that. The Dolphins need to bounce back. I don't know it's only week 1, but disappointing season last season, and a start like that is not a recipe for success. Now, The defense had absolutely no answers. That's obvious. The Colts scored every single time they had the ball. Every time. They didn't score a touchdown every time, but they scored every single time they had the ball. That has not been done in the NFL. If it has ever happened, was a very, very long time ago, I think, is what they said. But yeah, there was no answer whatsoever from this Dolphins defense. The only side note I have that is positive from them is they made a few decent tackles for loss. That's it. Really, really nothing other than that. Now, some of it could have been how well the Colts executed. I'd say there's a chance, but there seems to be a lack of physicality from this Miami defense. This Miami team, really, and this was a concern in preseason when they did their joint practice with the Bears. A lot of complaints from the Miami camp said that the Bears were too physical, but all of the reporters were saying the Bears looked awesome and the Dolphins looked weak. They looked soft, and that's exactly how week 1 went. And no surprise, you practice soft, you play soft. And so I don't know exactly what is going on in these Miami practices, but it's got to go up, man. The intensity isn't there. The only positive of the whole team is Devon Achane had a decent game. Did a couple of Devon Achane things. The touchdown he scores, he gets it way behind the line of scrimmage and breaks 2 tackles to score. That was the only positive Miami had all game. Now, a much more positive note is the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I'm going to start by saying that Daniel Jones is only a system quarterback. But if the system is this good, this could also be vice versa. Maybe the Colts didn't execute that well and the Dolphins' defense is just this bad. However, if the system is this good, Daniel Jones can take this team to a very good place. He looked great. He was 22 for 29, 272 yards, and 3 total touchdowns. And his favorite target seemed to be tight end Tyler Ward, who had 7 receptions for 76 yards. Almost had a touchdown. It slipped out of his hands. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick actually got a tip on that ball, which made the catch more difficult. So fair enough to Minkah for that. But Tyler Ward had a very strong game, a very good first game in the NFL. And Daniel Jones looked awesome. There was several impressive throws. The touchdown to Michael Pittman was one of them. He found a wide open man and he put it right in the breadbasket. So it was a really impressive game from Daniel Jones. Now, again, is he going to be an X factor that's going to win them games? No, he is not. It's just not going to happen. However, if the system and the offense runs this well, he's not really going to hold them back all that often, I don't think. As long as he continues to play like that anyway. So Daniel Jones was a very big surprise from me. Did not expect to see the Colts have that much success in week 1. Then they took advantage of Miami mistakes. Obviously, Miami kept turning the ball over, and they were capitalizing, even if it was just field goals. So that was a really big deal. And then the couple of broken plays, I mentioned the Michael Pittman touchdown. He ends up wide open. They took advantage of a play like that too. So you have to punish teams when they give you freebies. And that's exactly what the Indianapolis Colts did. We saw teams this week, which I'll talk about later, not take advantage of mistakes by defenses or mistakes by teams' offenses. So it was a very good game on both sides of the ball from from Indianapolis. Miami was not good, and their defense made the big plays. Forced a fumble. They had 2 picks. Cam Byram and Franklin both doing their job there, and they also got home 3 different times. So, yeah, they looked really solid. And the blitzes that they were running. There's one specifically. The first sack that they get, Tua does not stand a chance on that play. He snaps the ball, and instantly he looks left. And this, I don't remember who that came up with the sack, but screaming off the edge, I think it was a defensive back, unblocked, on the blind side, drills Tua. Not a chance in the world he gets that ball off. So yeah, the blitz looked really solid from the Colts. It was executed very well, and there's a lot to like about that performance from the Indianapolis Colts. Now, are they favorites to win the division? No, I don't even think they still make the playoffs. But it's very early. We won't be talking about that anytime soon. But it's a great start, and it's where you want to be. Arizona Cardinals visited the New Orleans Saints. This was one of the less fun games of the week between this and the Raiders and the Patriots, but there still are some talking points. We'll go ahead and start with the Cardinals. Thought Kyler Murray looked good. However, this Cardinal passing offense is so reliant on Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., who combined had 11 of the 21 receptions, 15 of the 29 targets, and 132 of the 165 yards. They also scored the only passing touchdown. I don't think they gave the toss from Murray to Connor as a passing touchdown. If they did, then he scored one of the two. However, if teams have, a way to scheme out a tight end of a game, and they can take away opportunities for Trey McBride, and then they have a lockdown corner, which is probably a lot of good NFL defenses. This Cardinals offense is not going to beat them. They're not. Now, they did have a couple of big plays. Trey Benson ripped off a really nice run, and James Conner looked like him normal self. So there still were positives. The O-line is not good. Kyler took 5 sacks. He can't be running for his life back there. Now, he's very good at running for his life. He might look like an angry toddler while doing it, but he was, very good at scrambling, something that Kyler Murray's been good since his OU days. So there is some good, and if they can continue to build just on Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, they will be okay. They're not going to be great. They're not going to win a lot of games. However, there's positive there. Will Johnson was awesome. He looked very, very, very good. He had 3 pass deflections. He absolutely drilled Chris Olave on a screen pass. And he only gave up 4 receptions for 32 yards. So that's a positive. This Cardinal defense has needed a lot of key pieces, and if that can be a cornerstone of their secondary for, a long time to come, that's a great pickup. I was surprised Will Johnson fell as far as he did, but he looked great. He looked really strong in his Cardinal debut. And then we moved to the Saints. Wow. I'll start with the positives again. They blitzed really well. Very, very effective when they blitzed. They got to Kyler twice. And both of them were absolute heaters. He did struggle. Kyler did struggle to pick up some of the blitzes, which is probably a lot of the reason that he got sacked. And there was a couple of times where he could be getting the ball out and he was sacked. Again, the Cardinals' line is an issue. But the Saints blitzed really well. Cameron Jordan had a good game. And he looked like, it's going to be an effective piece of this Saints defense if they can continue to do it. Alvin Kamara and Juwan Johnson were the only positives for this Saints offense. They probably should have won the game. Juwan Johnson gets both hands on a contested catch at the last play of the game, and he doesn't hold the ball. That is very frustrating. It's really frustrating for Saints fans and probably for the coaches. Other than that, Juwan Johnson had a really good game. He had a very good game. But, you got to hold the ball at the end, man. You got to come up with the big play. So, yeah, I thought those were the only positive. Alvin Kamara is still so good receiving-wise. He can just make plays happen. He will bounce 2-3 defenders. He's just very hard to tackle. Olave needs to be given more action, man. That is something else I'd like to see in this Saints offense, is just get the ball to Olave. Because he's really good after the catch. It's not something that he's exactly renowned for. He's a great route runner. But if you're going to focus the ball to a receiver, it should be Chris Olave, and I don't know why he wasn't seeing more targets. That takes me to the quarterback issue. Now, they went with Spencer Rattler. Obviously, they drafted Tyler Shough, and it was just, there's not a lot to love about Spencer Rattler. And I've actually said this, I didn't really love him out of college. I watched a lot of OU, and while he made a few, it felt like, he would do a couple of really nice things, but then he'd always make a costly mistake or two, and there's just not a lot of consistency. He does have a very strong arm, a very, very strong arm, and I will give him the credit for that. I will give him I will give him credit for his ability to handle an offense. It's kind of the same thing as Daniel Jones. If you can produce a system that is good enough, he probably won't hold this team back. The difference is this Saints system is not good enough. It's not going to be good enough. I don't see them being very good at all. The issues with Spencer Rattler, for me, come with his athletic ability because it's not super strong. He's not a great scrambler. And his decision-making is fine. It's not elite. It's not even really good. It's fine. It's, NFL level. His accuracy is not good. Its accuracy is just not great. It isn't. And it's an issue that a lot of NFL quarterbacks have to deal with. It's a lot of reason that projected starting quarterbacks don't end up making it to that next level is because their accuracy just is not good enough. It's been an issue with Anthony Richardson. It was an issue with Mitchell Trubisky. Justin Fields was criticized for it for a long time. So there's a lot of big names, not that those are huge names, but I'm getting at. There's a lot of quarterbacks that fall off from being starters to not because of an accuracy issue. But where I will give him credit is he did make a few really strong throws. And one of those was the throw that he fit the ball into the window for Juwan Johnson. Of course, he didn't hold it. That would have been quite the throw, quite the touchdown pass. And his receiver didn't hold it. So, admittedly, there was other things that held him back, but I just don't know if he is the answer. But I don't think Tyler Shough is very good either. So I'm sure they'll find a way to win a few games, but it won't be a lot of them. Bears took a 26-10 win at home against the Panthers. This game was another one that went through a weather delay. It was halfway through the second quarter, and it was quite the long delay. I think it was an hour and a half. Not a lot to like from the Panthers. I'll be blatantly honest with you. Bryce Young did not show the promise that we saw in last season in the Week 1 opener. He went 18 for 35, 154 yards, and threw 2 interceptions. The second interception wasn't really his fault. It was quite the strange deflection. So, you'll live with that. It's not really his fault, but he objectively didn't have a great game. Yeah, it was a bit of a letdown from him. His first interception was just an awful decision. Just no reason to throw the ball when he does. The DB is absolutely screaming down on his target. He's staring the guy down, and the DB is flying to come make this play. And of course, Bryce just throws it to him anyway. And the receiver stands no chance because he's waiting for the ball. DB comes up with it, just simple as. And then really late in the game, it's honestly the last chance the Panthers have of actually getting anything in the game. If they can convert this 4th and 1 in the red zone, there's a strong chance that they can take something away from this game, because it would have been a lot tighter. Bryce Young threw the ball away. He threw the ball out of the back of the end zone. Now, there's 2 receivers in the vicinity, but Bryce Young 100% threw that ball away. It's 4th down. Why would you do that? It was so odd. Sitting and watching that back, just absolutely sails the ball over anyone standing there's head, and it's 4th down. Now, granted, if that was 3rd down, I'd say, okay, maybe he just didn't think those guys were open. But 4th down, buddy, you have to make a play there. And you know that. You're an NFL-level quarterback. What are we doing? It was very odd. And it's things like that this is the reason that people continue to say that Bryce Young will not cut it in the NFL. Even though there's a lot of aspects that Bryce Young possesses that tell me that he could be an NFL quarterback, he does things like that. That is such a boneheaded throw, and I couldn't believe it watching it. The defensive line was awful. It was so bad. They got to the quarterback one time. It didn't register as they didn't land a sack. They just hit the quarterback one time. Um, they gave up 113 rushing yards, while only coming up with one tackle for loss. They just did very little to stop anything. Travis Etienne was an animal all game, and there is very little life in that defensive line of the Carolina Panthers. However, there is one player on that Panthers defensive line or defense that is really good, and his name's J.C. Horn. And he was targeted 3 times, held him to 1 reception, and his interception was freaking ridiculous. It's a ball that's slightly underthrown by Trevor Lawrence, but there is no reason J.C. Horn should go up there with one hand and pull that thing down, and that's exactly what he does. He's just so good. He really is, and a lot of people were talking about when J.C. Horn was drafted. He was drafted ahead of another elite corner. It is totally blanking right now. He was drafted ahead of Patrick Surtain, which objectively, yes, still a terrible decision because Patrick Surtain is the best cornerback in football. However, J.C. Horn is very, very good. So admittedly, while you miss out on maybe the best corner in football, you still get a really elite corner. So I'm not justifying the decision, but the Panthers have a great player in J.C. Horn. The Jaguars, like I said, Travis Etienne was very good. He looked a lot more like his rookie self than he did his sophomore self. He really struggled last season. He even really got benched last season, and now his competition's gone because they already shipped Tank Bigsby to Philly. He looked great. He had 1 massive carry. He had 16 carries for 143 yards. I think he had almost a 70 or 80 yard rip. I don't remember exactly when, but he had a really big run at one point. But overall, he just looked really, really good. He's going to be given the full workload now, I imagine. He just is a very decent running back. And again, there was a lot of criticism when he was drafted because they didn't feel like they needed a running back because James Robinson was around. But look how that's all played out. And Travis Etienne is going to be a weapon for this offense. Now, what I will say after that is that won't mean a whole lot if Trevor Lawrence doesn't get it together because objectively wasn't very good. His accuracy is holding this team back. Brian Thomas Jr. was targeted, I think, 7 times and only had 1 catch. And 3 or 4 of them were just atrocious throws. He only ended up with 1 catch. And that is not a good sign whatsoever for this offense because Brian Thomas Jr. was their lifeline on offense last year when they couldn't get anything going. It was get the ball in his hands. And if you can't get the ball in his hands, how are you expecting to win games? And they addressed it in the press conference. It just isn't a good situation for Trevor Lawrence to not be connecting with his best receiver. I thought he found Travis Hunter a good couple of times, which was fine. Travis Hunter looked all right on offense. But Brian Thomas Jr. is going to make big plays for this offense, and if he can't get the ball because the ball is consistently thrown away from him when he's targeted, that's not a good thing, obviously. But yeah, Travis Hunter is going to be a primary offensive weapon, and they're going to find a way to try to get him involved in the defense is what I was told. That's what Liam Cohen was saying. I think it's not going to happen right away, but I do think he will get defensive touches, more reps on the defense as it goes on. He didn't really do anything when he was on the defensive side of the ball, but offense, I think he landed with 6 catches. He looked okay. But yeah, that'll be something to keep an eye on. This Jags defense wasn't really tested by the Panthers, who just aren't a very good offense. And a total little side note for this Jaguars team is that Cam Little is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if I've ever seen a kicker make 30 and 40 yarders so comfortably. I mean, on one of them, he cleared the top of the goalpost. That isn't normal. This guy is probably going to hit a 70-yarder in an NFL game and shatter the record for the longest field goal made in an NFL game. So that is something to keep an eye on. Not that it's that important. I think it's just kind of interesting that the Jaguars kicker is actually that freaking good. To the final of the early games for Sunday, which was the Vegas Raiders and the New England Patriots. Now, this wasn't a great game. The Raiders came away with a 20-13 win, and talking points for the offense is that Brock Bowers is still one of the best. No, he is the best receiving tight end in the league, and it's not. I'm not sure it's close. Sam Laporte is good. Brock Bowers is elite. 5 receptions, 103 yards. That's not normal. 20 yards a catch, and he didn't finish the game. I hope he's healthy for week 2. They play Monday night against the Chargers. Brock Bowers is so good. He's so good. Like Geno was finding him every chance he could, and he only was able to find him 5 times, because this was actually a pretty impressive game from the receiving core of the Raiders. Trey Tucker had a big game. He had a touchdown, multiple big catches, and Jacoby Myers continued to do his thing. He had, I think, 7 catches on 10 targets. So Geno has a lot to work with here in this offense. That's without Ashton Jeanty getting going. So the Raiders looked quite comfortable. And I think some of that is just a testament to how bad this Patriots secondary is without Christian Gonzalez. They looked awful. They looked really, really bad. But this was a fun game. In the passing attack for the Raiders, Geno Smith, 24 for 34, 362 yards. And he did throw a pick as well as a touchdown. But overall, there was something about this Raiders offense that I think is going to work. Especially if they can develop some form of run game for Jeanty. He was okay. It wasn't really his fault that he wasn't able to produce anything huge. The O-line is not good. Jeanty did score, but on the play he scores, he gets met in the backfield and he happens to spin off a tackle and fall into the end zone, reach into the end zone. Geno got tackled or hit a lot. Each team gave up 9 quarterback hits. Geno was sacked 4 times. It's just an issue it really is an issue for this Raider team, is that the offensive line is going to hold back any production. But they got the win despite that, and Geno went for 300 yards. So if he can get the ball out quick to find his guys, he has the weapons. So this Raider offense, if they can put the pieces together next year with the offensive line, could be a really solid team to go forward with. There's a lot to like. Defensively, a really poor first half, but they really stepped it up in the second. They, in the fourth or in the second half, but a lot of it came in the fourth. They forced a fumble. They had an INT. They had 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 pass deflections. So did all the right things in the second half, and that's why they ended up coming from behind to win the game. Yeah, I mean, they overall had a strong game, really did. Did enough. They only gave up 13 points, so even when they weren't playing as well, they did enough to win the game. Now, the Patriots, again, also gave up 9 quarterback hits and 4 sacks, but what confuses me on the offense, and that's where I'm going to start, is why in a game that up until the fourth quarter, you were very much, even in the fourth quarter, you only lose the game by 7 points. You were in the game. Why are we not trying to run the ball? And it's not like they couldn't, because Travion Henderson was averaging 5 yards a carry. But he only saw, 6 carries. He was averaging 5 yards per carry. And he looked really good. But Drake May threw 46 passes. It was so odd to me why you're forcing the passing game so much when you could really have slowed down that clock, and maybe you don't make as many mistakes if you aren't trying to force the ball so much. I think Drake May threw 2 INTs, and I don't even think he played that badly. I thought Booty had a really good game. Kayshon Booty was very, very good. Diggs saw a decent amount of touches. He had a decent game. Overall, I thought the Patriots threw the ball well, but they threw it way too many times, and they did not truly try to establish a run game. It was really odd. Yeah. I don't even know what else to say. 6 carries for 24 yards, 6 receptions for 24 yards. Tyreek Stevenson only had 2.1 yards per carry. So objectively, Henderson was far better on the ground, and it was just very strange to me why he only saw six carries. I think I just said receptions. It was 6 carries that they gave to Henderson. But yeah, I felt like the Patriots offense could have done a lot better in that game if they weren't so ready to live or die by the pass. As for the defense, that secondary without Christian Gonzalez, as I've already said, was so bad. I thought the boys up front did their job. Again, they got to the quarterback 9 times, 4 of them being sacks. They had 10 tackles for loss, but there's just nothing back there. Brock Bowers got open constantly. Again, only had 5 catches, but didn't finish the game. Myers had 7 catches. Trey Tucker played well, but there was just no resistance from this Patriots secondary, and that is something that desperately needs to be addressed, and it will when Christian Gonzalez gets healthy. You're at least taking the number 1 option of Jacoby Myers away had he been healthy, and other teams are taking away the number 1 option when Gonzalez is healthy, but without him, I don't see them winning games. That secondary was torched. First being the Titans and the Broncos in Denver. A 20-12 win for the Broncos. Now, you didn't expect the Titans to do anything in this game, but they gave it a run for their money. They arguably could have won the game if it weren't for a lot of mistakes down the stretch. They should have been scoring a touchdown or 2 on some of these drives where they were kicking field goals. That starts with Cam Ward. Now, his receivers absolutely let him down on a couple of plays. I think Calvin Ridley had a drop where he got both hands on it, and it had a lot of speed on it. But I felt like he definitely should have held that ball for the reputation of Calvin Ridley being a strong receiver, a very good receiver. I was surprised to see him not hold the ball. However, there is something to be said about the way Cam Ward was throwing the ball, because he was throwing absolute missiles every time he threw the ball. If he would put some air under it, which some of them could have used, they probably end up as completions instead of incompletions. So it was odd. That's something that needs to be worked on, because he was throwing the ball 100 miles an hour at his receivers. That's not an easy ball to catch, no matter how open you are. Yeah, and so, like I said, they did not take any advantage of field position. The Titans defense, who had a great game, forced 3 turnovers. They came up with a forced fumble and 2 interceptions, and the Titans did not convert any of them into a touchdown. One of them was inside the 40-yard line of the Broncos, and they did not score a touchdown. They ended up kicking a field goal. They kicked 4 of them, and it wasn't enough. You don't find the end zone. It's pretty rare you win a football game. So that is the concern with the offense. I don't know how much better it will get, but it feels like some of them is pretty fixable. The Cam Ward throwing issue and the receivers not holding the ball, that's something that can be knocked off in 2 weeks. So we'll see. But again, then the defense, I thought, did their job. They forced takeaways. They made Bo Nix not look very good, and they shut down the run. Neither guy for the Broncos carrying the ball between Dobbins and Harvey had a great game. Especially on the ground. I think Harvey had one really big carry, but that was really, and then Dobbins scored a touchdown. But, they did a great job. I thought Jeffrey Simmons was fantastic, which you kind of come to expect with this Titans defense. That is the best player on this defense, I would say. But it kind of caught me by surprise how much how great they looked. I thought they would struggle, and they didn't, especially against a pretty explosive offense of the Denver Broncos. The other thing that held them back is the fact that, Cam Ward was hit 6 times. He was hit 12 times, and 6 of them were sacks. That is the reason that this offense struggled. Not only because you can get around a few missed throws or a few drop passes, but if your rookie quarterback gets hit 12 times, you're not going to have success. And the sacks were drive killers. Now, there was 1 or 2 of them where Cam Ward was holding the ball too long, sure, but he's got to try and make a play. Especially when you had anything go right, he's going to try and make a play. You hold down 2 sacks, but 12 quarterback hits is not good. And that was a reason that they got bullied. I think you can find it the 4-minute and 12 mark in the third quarter pretty much sums up how bad this O-line was, because it wasn't pretty at all. I mean, that play in specific, Cam Ward goes to go play action, and as he pretends to hand the ball off to the running back and turns, every single defensive lineman for the Broncos and 3 linebackers were all pressuring, and all of the defensive linemen got home. There was not a single guy that did not beat their block, and then both linebackers ended up. Cam broke the first sack, but then there was 4 Broncos surrounding him. It was a travesty of a blocking play from the Titans. It was really bad. But that's where I'll give the Broncos credit to start. Their defense was fantastic. Did not give up a touchdown. They came up with some really strong turnovers. They got after Cam Ward, 6 sacks on the day. They hit the quarterback 12 times. You cannot expect more from a defensive line. They really did do what they needed to do. They also forced 2 fumbles. So it was a strong game out of the Broncos defense. The way they struggled was with the offense, because Bo Nix wasn't great. Now, the touchdown to Courtland Sutton, awesome throw. And it felt like he was just really inconsistent. He made some really great plays, but then made some really not great plays. He threw 2 picks. One of them, I think, was fairly unlucky, but one of them was not good. It was the strangest play, because the second interception, I think it's the second one, he snaps the ball, and without even checking to see, how the play is going to run, he instantly starts moving to his left. He snaps the ball, looks right, and just instantly starts rolling left. There's not really a lot of pressure at all. None of the Titans defenders have gotten to a position where you say he should leave the pocket. And he kind of shifts to his left and then sets his feet. And as he sets his feet, he decides that he wants to throw the ball to the right. And as he does that, he makes the throw so much harder because of where he's now, 8 or 9 yards farther left than he was 5 seconds ago. And so then he tries to throw it all the way across the field, and he misjudges the throw when it's picked off. It was a really strange decision, and it's just not the kind of play that you see out of a guy like Bo Nix, who I thought was really good last year. And the first one is just a bad decision to throw the ball. It's a risky play. There's a defender lurking, and he tries to force the ball. He gets it wrong. Those are the ones you'll kind of live with, because it could have been something really positive if it had been completed, which it wasn't. It was picked off. So you're not really that mad about that one, but the second one is just so odd. And I don't know if I'm missing something, if I don't understand, and there's actually is a reason that he went all the way left before throwing it, but it was so odd to see a quarterback under no pressure just go straight left after snapping the ball. I do think that J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey are going to be a good 1-2 punch in the league. They just needed a bit more of an open game. This game was really, pass heavy from the Broncos, and there wasn't a whole lot of space to work with because the Titans did a pretty solid job of stopping the run, which led to kind of a bail on it late in the game. But they both showed flashes of why they're going to be good. Dobbins was coming off a great year with the Chargers, and then Harvey being a rookie. So I do think there is 2 good backs there. I think they're a little bit similar, which doesn't really lead to great combinations. But I do think that there is a way it works out with both of them getting a solid workload. San Francisco visiting the Seattle Seahawks. A 17-13 score is your final. And my biggest takeaway from the Niners' performance was that Ricky Pearsall is very, very good. Just an elite field stretcher, man. He came up with a lot of big catches, 4 receptions, 108 yards. I think he had a 40-yard catch at one point. That was the best throw of the day for me from Brock Purdy, who I feel like, well, there is a lot to like about Brock Purdy, the way he manages a game. And, people call him a system quarterback. They're going to say what they're going to say about managing a system. I don't think that's a bad thing, first off. I know I said it about Daniel Jones. I didn't say it was a bad thing then. I don't think it is a bad thing to be a game manager or a system quarterback. I just think, obviously you'd rather have the guys that can make or break games. And I don't know if Brock Purdy can do that. As good as he is, I feel like he does struggle to make the elite throws that, make the throws that elite quarterbacks do make. And that's fine because the Niners are still going to win games, especially when Christian McCaffrey plays as well as he did the other day, which he did. He had 142 total yards, as 22 carries and 13 receptions. He was really good, and that's where this firepower of the offense is going to come from. Now, of course, Brock Purdy is now hurt, which isn't ideal. Both of his interceptions were bad throws. I will point that out, that he did make some mistakes and some costly mistakes, but they didn't cost him the game, which is important. The first one wasn't as bad as the second one. I just do not think he makes the elite throws. Now, he's actually, in my opinion, lucky to not throw a third interception on the touchdown to the tight end. I cannot remember his name. I do apologize for that. But the guy jumps in, it's very odd because Purdy is rolling right, and it's late in the play, and he has to make a play. If you don't make a play here, you lose this game. So that's why I'll give him credit, because you do have to go make a play, and you're trusting your tight end. So maybe he's not exactly lucky to not throw a third interception, but the ball itself isn't great. He throws a very contested ball against Reek Woolen, which is not very much a good idea, because Tariq Woolen's very good. And yet, his tight end goes, out-muscles Woolen, and pulls the ball down, and they win the game. So, maybe I'm not giving him enough credit for trusting his guy. However, some of his decision-making was a bit off. And we've seen Brock Purdy have games like that where he just isn't making the best decisions. The first one that comes to mind was 2 years ago up against the Baltimore Ravens, where I think he threw 5 interceptions. He just continued to make bad decisions. So, you'll live with it every once in a while, and it didn't cost him a game this time around. So, overall, a decent win for the 49ers. If McCaffrey can stay healthy, this offense is going to continue to score, but they are now down without George Kittle, who they were out with for the entire second half. So, it's going to be a lot of Ricky Pearsall for Mac Jones. They're also without Brock Purdy now next week, so Mac Jones is going to look for Ricky Pearsall. He's going to look to just expect him to feed Christian McCaffrey, really, and maybe that'll be good enough for him. As for Seattle, Darnold to Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be a problem for defenses. Jackson Smith and Jigba get so much separation on his routes. It's so impressive. He might be, in that conversation of some of the best route runners in the entire league. The way he gets open late in his routes is so impressive, and it was making for Darnold really easy throws. He had 9 receptions, 124 yards. Obviously, he did fumble, which wasn't great. But overall, he had a great game. He really did. I thought Jackson Smith and Jigba was awesome, and he was almost the reason they won until he coughed up the football. But Darnold, well, I don't think it's going to be a fluke from him last season. I think we're seeing the best. I think spending time in a Kyle Shanahan offense when he was in San Francisco and then getting to play under Kevin O'Connell is absolutely the best case scenario for many quarterbacks, almost any quarterback could ask for. So that was a big deal, and I think that really will save Sam Darnold's career those 2 seasons, and I don't think that he's going to struggle or that he's going to not look the same as he did last season. I think the Seattle team is going to win a fair few games, probably finish close to 500, but he's going to make some of the same plays that he made throwing to Justin Jefferson with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and the longer that connection continues to strengthen, the better they're going to be. The issue with the Seattle offense, between Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, there wasn't really a run game, and it's very odd that Kenneth Walker has not looked anywhere near like his rookie self, because his rookie year, he was fantastic, and it wasn't really because he had a great O-line. He was breaking tackles consistently. He was ripping off massive runs, and he's not doing it anymore. And I know last season he struggled with injury, and that's why Charbonnet played a lot, but Charbonnet didn't do a whole lot this time around either. So I don't know where they're going to generate runs from. I don't know if there is an issue with Kenneth Walker, if the system that Seattle's trying to run the ball in is not working. I'm not sure, but it was quite the issue. And then their blitz is fantastic on defense. The way they ran it, they got all of their sacks coming off blitzes. You can see it several times, pretty much any time. Go look at any of their sacks, and it was just a really nice blitz. They made Brock Purdy rush throws, and I think that's how they ended up with their first interception, because Purdy is kind of getting hit as he throws that ball. That's why I said earlier that it was more so the second one that was a bad decision. However, he did get rushed quite often, and it forced him to make bad throws. And it was very impactful. They forced an interception off of the blitz on both occasions. So it was really impressive to see how well they did get after the quarterback. And that's the kind of formula on defense that could win you games, as long as your secondary can hold up. The secondary didn't have their greatest day between Witherspoon and Reek Wolin, but, at some point you're going to have a bad game. They had theirs early. Now we'll see how strong that defense can stay next week. But overall, I think both these teams are going to be good. I don't know if either of them are going to be real threats in the NFC. San Francisco, if they put it all together, could be. I thought their defense was strong as well. Nick Bosa is such an issue. Such an issue. I forgot to say this when I was talking about the Niners. I completely skipped over the Niners defense. Nick Bosa was absolutely fantastic. Fred Warner is still a top 2 linebacker in the NFL. Maybe him and Roquan Smith. I don't know which one you want to put where, but I mean, they were fantastic. They shut down any chance of the run from Seattle. Both of the RBs were held back. Both the running backs were held under 3.5 yards per carry, and Bosa had 3 tackles for loss and the game-winning forced fumble. So that right there is so freaking ridiculous from the San Francisco 49ers defense, and it starts up front. It was a really good game from them on the defensive side of the ball. The Packers rolled through the Detroit Lions, which might be up there with how surprising the result of the Colts-Dolphins game was. The Packers looked fantastic. 27-13 win for the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Lions didn't have a run game, which is very odd. I don't know if it was just how good the Packers defense is, or because you're not going to tell me it's in the talent of the running backs, because David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are fantastic. They are pretty comfortably the best running back duo in the league. And Gibbs had 9 carries for 19 yards, and Montgomery had 11 for 25. You're not going to tell me it's an issue of the talent of the backs. You're not going to tell me it's an issue of the offensive line, because that is one of the better offensive lines in the league. I think it might be an issue of the system. And I know I've used that word quite a few times today, but, you lost Ben Johnson, and all of a sudden your run game that's been so good the last 2 years really struggles. I'm not sure that's a coincidence. We'll see how they look against Ben Johnson and the Bears this week. It wouldn't surprise me if they ran all over the Bears, because the Bears' run defense isn't great. However, they didn't look good week 1 at all. And that could just be a testament to how great the Packers defense played, how strong they are with Micah Parsons. But yeah, it was not a good run game. The defense did almost nothing well. They got bulldozed. It starts with the fact that the receivers were getting wide open. Love consistently making big plays against them. I think this week it looked a lot to be came a lot from Romeo Doubs. Had a big week this week, and he came up with 2 or 3 huge plays. Jaden Reed had a good game. He scored the first touchdown for the Packers, and there was really no answers from the Lions defense on how to stop anything Green Bay were doing. They couldn't stop the run either. Josh Jacobs had another really good game, continuing to extend that touchdown streak of his. There was just no answer at all. And they weren't breaking up passes. Even when the Lions corners were around and in a position to make a play, they weren't doing it. They weren't stopping Love from completing finding his receivers and making completions. So it was a really strange game. They, again, lost Aaron Glenn, so maybe there's an issue. Aiden Hutchinson didn't do a whole lot either, which was kind of understandable considering he's coming off a broken leg. But there needs to be something. There's got to be more fight in this Lions defense. And if there's anything Dan Campbell can get his team to do, it's to fight. So I'm not too worried just yet. The offense, again, they just looked out of sync. There was a few times Goff was throwing to St. Brown, and it didn't go well. Timing was off. There was a few poor throws. I think St. Brown had a drop. So, something felt off in that offense. And again, I don't want to keep going it, but is it a product of a new offensive coordinator? There's definitely a conversation about it, man. And then just a side note is that Isaac Tesla had the coolest first touchdown in the history of the NFL on a quick deep out route to the corner of the end zone, the front corner of the end zone. He pulled it in with one hand. It was really impressive. He kept both feet in bounds, so that was pretty cool. But then we'll go into the Packers, who have a much more positive note to talk about. Jordan Love looked really good, and I hate to admit it, but he was very, very good in that first game. The receiving core is continuing to do this kind of, receiver one roulette or catch by committee, whatever you want to call it, where depending on the week, this guy's going to get the ball or this guy's going to get the ball. And again, like I said, it felt like this week was Dobbs. Jaden Reed had quite a few catches. But it was overall a really decent receiving game from the team. Not a single receiver had more than 5 targets. Jaden Reed had the most at 5 targets. But, when you can spread the wealth in an offense. There's never been an issue like that. And it makes you a lot less predictable. So they're playing without Christian Watson still. And they looked good. They looked really good on offense. Josh Jacobs, again, continues to look very strong. And then Jordan Love's deep ball accuracy is insane. He has one of the prettiest deep balls in the league. He did a much better job of taking care of the ball as well. That's a Lions secondary that last season had a lot of takeaways on bad throws, and yet Love didn't turn the ball over. Something that he gets criticized a lot for. He goes from looking like, oh, wow, that's the best throw I've ever seen, to what in the world was that? That's one of the worst throws I've ever seen. So the consistency seemed a lot better. And, yeah, he just looked a lot better in terms of taking care of the ball. Now, the defense is really the talking point for the Packers because, oh, my goodness, I didn't think Micah Parsons was going to be taking them from a good defense to arguably one of the best in the league, because that's what they looked like against this really powerhouse offense. Micah Parsons himself was an issue all game. The team had 4 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. Rashawn Gary looked really good as well, and I think that's a product of Micah Parsons carrying so much attention from offensive lines that Gary's going to get one-on-one, and he wins that battle a lot of the time. A secondary held up as well. St. Brown did not have a good game. Some of that was from the corners who were heavily criticized in the offseason with Jerry Alexander leaving the group. But they did a lot right. Didn't give up any huge plays, and that's something that the Lions did really well, is have these big explosive plays. Didn't give up any, which is really impressive. And again, they just absolutely dominated the run game of a team that is one of the better running teams in the NFL. So overall, if I had to say it, this Packer team looks like they're going to coast through this division. It's a really strong division, don't get me wrong. They looked insane. They looked really, really good. And, they also, I'm filming this on Friday, so the Friday after week 1, obviously, they just destroyed Washington as well. The defense, they might be the best team in the NFC come the end of the season. Yeah, they were great. They are really, really good. We had by far the best game of the lot in a ridiculous shootout between the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football. 41-40 was ridiculous. I apologize to anyone who turned off that game at the end of the third quarter thinking the Ravens were going to coast the rest of the way. You should have known better. Because I will bring to you 35-14 over Miami with in the fourth quarter with 12 minutes to go. 20-3 against Buffalo at half last season or the year before, I'm not sure. As well as 19-10 against the Jaguars with 5:59 to go in the fourth quarter, and 31-17 over the Browns with 8 minutes and 57 seconds to go in the fourth quarter. Why did the Baltimore Ravens struggle to see out games like this? I have no idea. It is so odd that they just absolutely fall apart after their defense was so good in the first three quarters. They were incredible in the first half, part of the very first drive of the game, and then it just crumbles. And it's really starting to hurt Lamar Jackson's legacy. He has got to start finding a way to win these games, but for me, he didn't really do a whole lot wrong to not win this game. His offense scored 40 points. What I will say is interesting is that Lamar Jackson only threw the ball 19 times. Now, admittedly, he didn't necessarily have to because Derrick Henry was running people over and dribbling humans to the floor in the first half, which kind of gives you an incentive to not throw the ball when you can just hand it back to the behemoth of a running back you have. Henry, 18 carries, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. Of course, he did fumble at the end, which was pretty costly, which is a big reason that they did end up losing the game. So, a rare mistake out of Henry, but I would like to see when the run stops working in the third quarter, halfway through the third quarter, I'd like to see Lamar take some responsibility and win this game with his arm. He did late in the big drive. They only pick up 87 yards in the fourth, but a lot of them were to Zay Flowers, who had a big game, 7 receptions, 140 yards, and a touchdown. So Lamar should have been giving him the ball more often. Mark Andrews only had 1 catch. It's just so weird to me that he's not throwing the ball at least 20. He didn't throw the ball 20 times. He threw it 19 times. That is so odd in such a big game to see, even when the run stopped working, them not go to the air. And yeah, it's going to start to hurt Lamar Jackson's legacy if he's going to go down as a guy who could not, even if it's not his fault, because this game is a bit more on the defense, a lot more on the defense than it is the offense. The offense scored 40 points, and he didn't win the game. It is odd. It's really strange that they cannot see out a game like this. But 279 total yards from Lamar Jackson was very strong. So I thought he personally had a good game, even if he wasn't really throwing the ball. But overall, it was really strange. The defense was good until the start of the fourth quarter. Kyle Hamilton is so good. He is the best safety in football. He just is so good. However, Nate Wiggins got torched all night. He just had a terrible game. I think he gave up over 100 yards. Definitely gave him a touchdown, and I think it was on like 7 targets or something ridiculous. 5 targets maybe. But they were throwing his way a lot, and he had no answer. And that'll take me to Buffalo because Josh Allen, when his team needed him most, put on his cape, put the S on his chest, and went out there to be Superman, and it worked. 16 for 21, 251 yards, and 3 total touchdowns in the fourth quarter. 16 for 21, 251 yards, and 3 total touchdowns in the fourth quarter. That's ridiculous. That is so ridiculous. He does it on the ground. He does it in the air. Josh Allen was fantastic. Keon Coleman looked great. Keon Coleman looked like he's ready to be receiver one, take that next step. 8 receptions, 112 yards, and a touchdown. Really strong performance out of Keon Coleman. That is a brilliant point, a brilliant weapon to add to Josh Allen because he's needed a strong receiver one to be looking at these last 2 years. Khalil Shakir is good, but if Keon Coleman can take that step to being really good, it makes his offense that much better. James Cook had a good game in the air. He wasn't great on the ground. I think that's just a product of how strong the Ravens defense played throughout the majority of the game. And then this Bills defense started really slow. They were getting dribbled to the ground by Derrick Henry. They were getting run all over. And they really stepped it up, especially in the fourth quarter. Again, like I said, only 87 yards that they gave up in the fourth, and they only gave up 1 score in the second. So overall, a really strong game out of the Bills. A ridiculous comeback. I cannot believe that they did not lose this game. it was like 30-17 at some point. I think it might have been 40-17. Actually, it was something just absolutely ridiculous, and yet the Bills still found a way to win the game. It was really impressive how resilient they were. That leaves us with Monday Night Football, which is gonna hurt me to talk about a little bit. Obviously, Kyler Gordon. Oh, sorry, it's this way. Kyler Gordon's jersey up there. That's Jay Cutler next to him. Big Bears fan. They started so well. The first drive looked fantastic, and the pick six should have been the ending of it. But the Vikings come back to win 27-24 as the Bears melt down in the fourth quarter. And it's the same way with them, man. How they find ways to lose games like this, I really don't understand. I don't. We'll start with the Vikings. We're just not good in the first half. McCarthy, Justin Jefferson, very uncharacteristically dropped 2 passes. McCarthy struggled. The Bears' defensive line made a couple of big plays. I think Gervon Dexter got back there for 2 errors, a tackle for loss and a sack. They were causing JJ to make bad throws. Started with a 3-and-out and then got a second straight 3-and-out. They couldn't move the ball. The run game was not there in the first half. A lot of that coming from Grady Jarrett and Gervon Dexter through the middle. Montez Sweat had a good game. And then a 21-point comeback from J.J. McCarthy. The first touchdown pass was an absolute laser to Justin Jefferson. Then he finds Aaron Jones over the top, away from Noah Sewell to score the second. And then he runs in the third. So overall, it was a really good fourth quarter, and it was enough from J.J. McCarthy. I think there's a lot of things that him and Kevin O'Connell will work on. But there's promise. There's a lot of promise there. And anyone who was hating on J.J. McCarthy saying he isn't going to be a decent NFL quarterback, you're lying to yourself, because he has the talent. He is very good, and I think he might not be, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he's going to win games with this Vikings team because Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback wizard. The defense was superb in the second. They struggled on the opening drive, made a couple of good stops, but they were fantastic in the second half. They completely shut down the run. DeAndre Swift isn't the greatest back, but there was no run game, which made Caleb make more throws, and Caleb wasn't making some of the easy ones. So even when the Vikings were making mistakes and leaving guys open or guys were getting open, Caleb couldn't make them pay, and that was a really big problem for the Chicago Bears, especially down the stretch. And then, I already talked about him a little bit, but Justin Jefferson had a very quiet night. 4 receptions, 44 yards, and a touchdown. Admittedly, that's still pretty solid for, I'd say, about 70% of NFL receivers. But for Justin Jefferson, it isn't good enough. Now, that could just be a lack of chemistry between him and his sophomore quarterback who's yet to play in the NFL. But he did come alive late in the game. He came up with the touchdown to kickstart the comeback. But objectively, against a third-string defensive back, because that's who was on him the majority of the night, he was very rarely matched up against Tyreek Stevenson, and Jalen Johnson was hurt. Now, if he was up against Jalen Johnson, firstly, I would have backed the Bears to win, but secondly, it would have made sense had he struggled, because Jalen Johnson can take great receivers out of games, but he wasn't. He was up against a third-string quarterback, and admittedly, the guy came up with a pick six, which Justin Jefferson claims was also his fault. He was slow getting into his route, and he expects better from himself. But objectively, not a great night. Now, this is where we're going to start to talk about the Bears. And it's really interesting. Now, a lot of the conversation is that Caleb Williams cost him that game. Firstly, I'm going to tell you that Cario Santos not having a strong leg was an issue. The defense melting down in the fourth quarter was an issue. Ben Johnson made some questionable decisions as well. Why he challenged something that was so obviously not going to be overturned was beyond me, because you really would have killed for that last timeout. And then penalties. Penalties were a massive issue. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm complaining about the refs, right? But objectively, if you look at the 2 biggest penalties in that game, there's one in the red zone It's a holding call against Darnell Wright on the play before the flag comes out. The Bears pick up a first down, and they move inside the 20. The holding call that is called against Darnell Wright, you'd be lying to me if you tried to tell me that that is a holding call, because Darnell Wright is stood perfectly straight up. His hands aren't anywhere illegal, and then the Vikings defender kind of slips over. I thought there was no way that was a holding call, and that ended up being an absolute killer, because then Caleb got called for the intentional grounding as he slipped and tried to throw the ball away, and that pushed them to a 50-yard field goal, which Cario Santos missed because he doesn't have the strongest of legs. Which is a big issue, which they're now trying to fix by bringing in Jake Moody. I don't know how that helps at all, because I don't think Jake Moody is that great of a kicker either, but that's beside the point. And then the other one, which leads to the touchdown drive to Justin Jefferson, third and 7 or something ridiculous. J.J. McCarthy wildly overthrows this ball to one of his receivers. I can't remember exactly who it was. It wasn't Justin Jefferson. Pardon me. But there's a pass interference given against Tyreek Stevenson. Tyreek Stevenson doesn't really touch the... First off, I'm not sure it was a catchable ball. It was really overthrown by J.J. McCarthy, but Tyreek Stevenson doesn't really touch him. The receiver, again, I felt like he slipped, and again, it could be the bias in me. It could be, but I didn't think the two biggest penalties of the game were fouls. That's what I will say. Now, into more of the issues, the Bears still should have won that game regardless of those two calls, and that's why I'm not really that upset about those calls individually, but it is a different game if those aren't called. Caleb Williams really, really, really struggled with some throws that should have been money, and it was really, really odd, because it cost this team pretty massively. If we score on that final drive, if we score so much earlier, because he doesn't miss the throw to DJ Moore on the fade route, he scores a touchdown. We score a touchdown 30 seconds earlier. We get the ball back with 55 seconds rather than 14. So that was frustrating. And it was pointed out by a couple of people on social media that Caleb might just be trying to do too much with his eyes, because he's staring down Zacchaeus trying to buy time for DJ Moore, and that would have made sense if DJ Moore was running a corner route. But running a fade route, DJ Moore was wide open. The corner was never going to catch him. He should have just whipped the ball into DJ Moore. And his deep ball accuracy has been an issue since his rookie year. It was a massive issue last year. And again, he just misses DJ Moore by like 5 feet. It's not good enough. That should have been an easy touchdown. He misses a big play, 4th and 3, in the territory of the Vikings, going across to DJ Moore. There is a defensive back in the area, but Caleb throws it so badly that the defensive back didn't even have a chance to react to make the interception. It probably should have been a pick, but this is where I see it, because that throw is very possible if he just puts the ball closer to DJ Moore. Like, he just objectively needs to try to not lead DJ Moore there and just whip it into his hands, which he does have the arm talent to do. I think Caleb Williams is so afraid of making a mistake, and this is kind of an issue with Justin Fields in Chicago, and I think it might have been something Matt Eberflus drilled into him, or one of the two atrocious offensive coordinators he played under had drilled into him, that it's not acceptable to make mistakes. Because he seems, while he's done so well to not turn the ball over, he seems afraid of even the thought of turning the ball over, so he'd rather see if his receiver can make some ridiculous catch than put the ball in danger of being picked off. And that's what he needed on both the throw on 4th down to DJ Moore and an easy one over the middle to Cole Kmet, where he just missed Cole Kmet as well. They were easy throws that he puts a lot of distance between the player and the football, and I think it is because he might be afraid of throwing an interception. Also, some of it might be his footwork. His footwork is not great, but that can be fixed, and I think that can be fixed pretty quickly. So I'm not going to give up on Caleb Williams just yet, because he made so many brilliant throws. There was a couple of throws. The first one on the drive where he throws the ball outside the pocket, rolling to his right, with Roman Dunze on the touchline. Just a ridiculous throw. Not many quarterbacks in the league make that throw, man. And Caleb put it on the money. So there was a lot of flashes. Again, his ability to break the sack was fantastic. I think he only got sacked once. There was 3 or 4 plays where I'm like, well, he's going down, and then he gets out of it. One of them, he literally just shrugs off the defender and, picks up 4 yards on a scramble. So those are the plays that tell me that Caleb is going to be elite. But it's just about doing the easy stuff now, and the fact that he struggles to do the easy stuff is so weird. But I will move on from Caleb Williams now. I could talk about that issue for hours. We'll move into the run game, which does not exist. The ball carrier vision on DeAndre Swift is terrible. He refuses to recognize a hole, and it's almost like if DeAndre Swift is not running outside to the right or on a pitch, running outside the tackle, not only to the right, but running outside off the right or left tackle or running off a pitch, he is not going to pick up any form of yards at all. That's why I think Kyle Monangai could be quite the factor early in the season. I don't know if Rashawn Johnson will get a lot of touches this week against the Detroit Lions, but we have got to figure something out because that was not good. It was not a good look for the run game at all. I think DeAndre Swift is fine when it comes to pass catching. I think that's where he excels, but he is just not good at reading the running lane at all. The defense was brilliant until the fourth quarter. The pick six from Wright should have been the game over. Really should have. And it wasn't. And, you're going to live with that. But admittedly, missing arguably your best 3 defensive players in Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, and TJ Edwards, that tells me that Dennis Allen has the formula for this defense to be very, very good. So I'm excited by that. Really frustrated that they completely shut down late in the game, and they stopped being able to shut down the run, which is something they did really well throughout the first 3 quarters. But at the end of the day, so be it, man. It wasn't a great performance in terms of stopping anything in that fourth quarter, but overall, I think Dennis Allen has the right scheme, and that's what is important to look at. And then, like I said, man, penalties were such an issue. Consistently from Jonah Jackson on false starts. Darnell Wright got called for holding twice. DJ Moore got called for a false start, and that's probably something that's going to drive Ben Johnson crazy. Because you know how detail-oriented his system is, his play calling is. So it was quite interesting not interesting, but it was really annoying to see the same issue occur this season that it did last season. Because how many drives the Bears had killed because of penalties last season was tremendous. But yeah, I think overall the Bears should have won this game, and they did a lot of good, but it's going to be outweighed by the amount of bad there was, and that's just something you're going to have to kind of live with. Missing field goals to drawing false starts. Overall, the Bears were just not good in that fourth quarter, and it cost them the game. But that is the official recap from me on week 1 of the NFL 2025 season. We'll see how the season plays out. I don't know if I'll do this every week, but, maybe I'll do a, halfway through the season update and definitely a postseason. But, yeah, thank you for anyone who stayed through.